All right. We'll go back a couple lines just to get into the Inyan. We are a few lines above the middle of the page, Hey, and the line starts with Nisraf Maher. This is the end of reviewing the mashal of the fire with the wick. The fire is attached to the wick, but it holds on to that only because of the oil. And if not for the oil, then either the fire would not be able to attach it to be held out back by the wick, or if it did, then the wick would just quickly burn up, and it would go into nothingness. It would not produce a fire, a light, or anything like that. This is a mashal for the interrelationship and interaction between the nefesh ha'elokis and the nefesh habahamis. Now, this mashal, if we do not get into the details of it, it seems almost simplistic. You know, it works a similar way, but what is the relationship? What's the connection there? The nefesh ha'elokis, if you say the nefesh ha'elokis is attached to nefesh habahamis, so it has to illuminate the nefesh habahamis, transform the nefesh habahamis. What does that have to do with the fire, with the oil, and this whole mashal? So, therefore, we have to go into this mashal a little bit more in detail. Understand what is this phenomenon where you have a fire, and the fire consumes oil, and a little bit, and it's attached to the wick, and then it burns. Now, fire by nature rises upwards. Like we all know from the Moshe from the Tanya, that the fire, it rises upwards. And the reason that fire rises upwards is because fire is the lightest and the most fine and spiritual of all four elements that constitute the elements from which everything in the world is made of. In everything, you know, there is Eish, Ruach, Mayim, and Ofer. And these four elements is what constitutes every object in the world. Of the four, Eish is almost an intangible. That's why it constantly rises upward, because it is lighter than all the others. So it gets pushed up, and it rises upwards.
It's lighter than wind?
What?
It's lighter than wind?
It's lighter than wind, yes, sure. I'm sorry?
It's the most looking of all elements, no?
It's the most looking of all the elements, sure. Wind can go down and up. Fire can only go up.
You can't even see wind.
What?
You can't even see wind.
You can't see wind? The reason that you see fire is not the fire. You see the consumption of the other elements. That's why you see it, like smoke. Smoke is not fire. Smoke is the residue, is the burnt up wood, burnt up offer and mayim. That's smoke. So fire, the nature of fire, fire rises upwards. And if you attach fire to any object, the nature of the fire is that it makes nothing of the object. It consumes it. It transforms it into fire, so to speak. Because it cannot really correlate to any object.
You can't see fire?
What?
You said we cannot see fire?
You cannot see fire.
Is that what you said?
Pure fire you cannot see. You see fire because it combines with air and so forth. And okay, so the point is that fire consumes everything that you touch that it touches. It does not correlate to it. But then fire has a very valuable contribution if you're able to make it correlate. Like fire can be a source of light, fire can be a source of warmth, and it's a very useful element. Like the fire in this, there's fire in everything. There's an element of warmth in everything. That's the fire but this fire is tapered down by combination of the other three elements. But if fire were permitted to act on its own, then it would just consume it. Therefore, there is a means by which you can draw the benefit of fire without, in a positive way. And what is that? This is the oil. The oil also allows itself to be consumed by the fire. But it controls it. It tapers it down. It does not allow the fire to flare up in its full force. It allows the fire to burn slowly, which means that it actually does transform the object in which it is attached. But during the transformation, it gives off all its benefits, light and warmth. So that instead of being a destructive element, it becomes a positive element. So this is the mashal of the fire with the oil. Nefesh Elokis and Nefesh Abahamis. Nefesh Elokis and Nefesh Abahamis are opposites. And therefore the Nefesh Elokis, if the Nefesh Elokis should touch Nefesh Abahamis, what would happen? It would just nullify it, confuse it, and consume it. Because there is no way that the Nefesh Elokis and Nefesh Abahamis can correlate to one another. They're two opposites completely. And if you bring them together, then there is a total clash. And this is where we're up to now. The end of Nisrat Maher. You see that Nisrat Maher? That's a few lines above the middle of the page. That's the line, the starting of the line. That if the fire were to be attached to the psilo directly, without the oil, then it would be Nisra Maher, then the wick would just burn up quickly. Actually, as I said before, that there are two options, two situations. Either the fire would not at all function, would not show itself, would not attach itself to the wick at all, or it would just consume it completely. For instance, There are different types of wicks. If you had a wick of wood, then of course it would just, it would burn it up. Paper, it would consume it in no time. Then, like we have in these latest design of candles, of Shabbos candles, where they have the wick is made of fiber, of fiberglass. The fiber doesn't burn. So therefore the fire cannot really attach itself to the fire, to the fiber. But you put the fire, the fiber is a very good conductor of liquid. And if there is a liquid, either oil or paraffin, so the paraffin rises right through the fiber, and it burns beautifully. The fiber is holding the fire up, and the oil is the fuel, but that gets consumed, and it burns beautifully. So here's an example of a wick that would not be affected by fire at all. Fire cannot relate to it without oil. And then there is, of course, I mentioned before, the other kind of wicks that would just get consumed in no time. So this is a mashal for the Indian that we're learning here now about nefesh elikis and nefesh habamis. K'moi kein hu benimshu. The similar Indian is true by the nimshal. Nimshal means that which you are trying to understand, the analogy. Gamki, the beloy shemen, that without oil, efshar liyois biru the nefesh habamis. It's not possible that there should be birur, the purification of the nefesh habamis beho'ej and nefesh elikis, through the fire of the nefesh elikis. Now, let's talk again a little bit about the fire of the nefesh elikis. Just as we spoke about the physical fire. The physical fire can consume, it can attach itself to the wick, but then the wick will just burn up very quickly. The fire of the nefesh elikis also can attach itself to the nefesh habamis. But then, all right, let's focus in on this for a moment. The fire of the nefesh elikis, as we have discussed before, that I pointed out, what is the fire of the nefesh elikis? Essentially, this is what's called Ahavas Hashem. As we mentioned the other time when we had the session on Monday, in the human being, in the soul of the human being, there is an inherent desire. What is the meaning of an inherent desire? If anybody doesn't understand the words I'm saying, please stop me. Say, for instance, the will to live. This is something that everybody can readily relate to. Now, we are not even aware on an ongoing basis the will to live. We are aware that we don't want to be uncomfortable. We don't want to be cold. We don't want to be hungry. We don't want to be too hot. Anything that causes us discomfort, that we become aware of. But the essential element of what life is, what human life is, we're not even aware of it. And because of that, we can go waste our time without ever looking back and say, what did I just do? What did I lose? Nothing. Didn't lose any money. I didn't lose any weight. I didn't lose any sleep. So I didn't lose anything. But of course we realize that this is just a very, very superficial element. Because really deep down a person is aware that if he wasted his time, he lost something. What did he lose? There's an inherent means something that does not come from outside, it comes from the nefesh itself, it's meant inherent. Something that comes from it itself, an essential. You understand the word? Something that comes from the essence itself. The nefesh, like it's something in learning, nefesh odom is oil lamaylo, rises upwards. Why does it rise upwards? What's pushing him? What's wrong over here? It has an inherent and an essential desire to recognize and to experience and to live where it fits, where that in Ruchnis. This is nefesh od. There's not to be any reason for it, not because over here it's bad, but because this is what I want. This expresses itself in the form of a fire, because the desire for this is extremely strong, and there is nothing that a person would not do to get some of it. Say, for example, learning. Person is learning, and after a while he gets into the process of learning, and it fires him up. What's learning? Doesn't fill your belly. It's not in any way worldly rewarding. It's not necessarily going to make you into a great scholar or a great Rav or anything else, or any recognition. Just the experience of learning is enormously engaging to the person. And it's evident when you see two people learning together a piece of Gemara, and they start arguing. You can hear them 2 blocks away. They're so excited. Because every thought is a little bit of a fire. This is the fire of the nefesh. A thought fires a person up. Wow, what a thought. What an idea. What an idea. What is it going to buy you? Nothing. Nothing. I just want to have some more of it. I can't wait for the next installment. And if I went through a week or 2 weeks and I didn't learn, I didn't have that experience, I crave for it. This is the fire, the neshama fire. This is a real living fire. The nefesh habahamis does not really appreciate that. The nefesh habahamis appreciates a fire of a different kind. Like we said, the nefesh habahamis appreciates a tasty sandwich, a good worldly experience, whatever it is. But when the fire of the Nefesh Elokis is experienced in the Guf, the Nefesh Habahamis is also a participant. Because this is the wick to which it attaches itself. Otherwise, the Nefesh Elokis would just be out of the body altogether. So it is there and it's experienced in the body. Like we pointed out, that when they get excited, it's not just a quiet excitement in the mind or in the heart. They scream and they move their hands and it goes everywhere. The whole body becomes part of this excitement. The Nefesh Habahamis is a participant in that. And it senses the excitement. And because it senses the excitement, it actually joins in. At least for the moment, it joins in. And says, hey, this is pretty good.
I'm still understanding why the Nefesh Habahamis I'm like, wow, right. Just because it sees the Nefesh Elokis being so excited, therefore it wants to be excited too?
Yeah. No, it's not exactly the way you put it, because it sees Nefesh Elokis. It experiences the excitement of the Nefesh Elokis. It experiences that excitement.
How? Isn't it just the Nefesh Elokis is excited?
Because that's like fire attaches itself to a wick. The fire of Nefesh Elokis attaches itself. Like I said, the body itself gets warmed up.
So just like automatically?
It's automatic. The fire itself gets warmed up. Like a person, like you said, the body gets all heated up. From what? From learning. Because, as we learned way back when, because the Nefesh Elokis is in the body and is using bodily, worldly examples, worldly concepts to understand its ideas. Therefore, the Nefesh Habahamis, it can also be a participant. It's hey, you're right there in my territory. For example, don't steal. Nefesh Habahamis understand you shouldn't steal. Why? Because don't take my property. Don't bother me. Stay off my. Let me have my thing. Let me have my thing. You're disturbing me when you come and take my thing. Then the Nefesh Elokis comes to Nefesh Habahamis and says, you know something? There is a much more meaningful, deeper significance in this don't steal. See, the Nefesh Habahamis understands the lowest level of don't steal. It listens in and says, what's deeper about don't steal? What don't steal is that the fact that this is your property, this is something which is godly ordained. You don't have to fight for it. This is yours. God gave it to you. And God gave him his. And therefore he has to be respected, not just because you're fighting for it, but because it's really yours. Somebody says, oh, really? I had no idea that I had such privileges. So he understands that. And then we go further, he actually begins to understand what the Nefesh Elokis is all about. And he appreciates it. Until the time that he has a chance to steal something, then he's in trouble. But he has that understanding, and it's exciting because it talks about truth. It kind of gives him a sense of truth of his own existence. It's a wonderful thing. And he points out all the time, this is what distinguishes you from an animal. Animals don't have that privilege. They have to actually stand guard for everything that they have, not human beings. It's established rules and nobody can touch it. And somebody wants to go into your house, he has to knock on the door. And if you don't give him permission to enter, he will never dare into it. So that is part of, so to speak, of a human element. And then Rabbi misunderstands it and can relate to it. I said, and from this he can rise higher and higher. Okay. So this is what the Rebbe says, that in the Nimshal also, without oil there cannot be a birur the Nefesh Abamis. Even though Nefesh Elokis provides a fire, which means it provides a higher perspective, but it will not create a birur the Nefesh Abamis. Birur means that it actually becomes refined and it actually relates to it. You understand the difference? Not that it just eliminated, but it relates to it. Like if you tell the Nefesh Abamis, don't steal, because of the reason the Nefesh Elokis says, so there are two ways that he can relate to it. Either he could say, he has to hold himself back with iron chains, not to steal, otherwise he's going to get punished. Or he can actually be mevaresh. He says, you're right, it's not the right thing to do. But Nefesh Abamis says it's not the right thing to do, and says this is degrading to me, I don't want to be an animal. That's an accomplishment. That's an accomplishment. Only the Nefesh Elokis can effectuate that. This is called birur. But in order for this birur to take place, there has to be that real connection between Nefesh Elokis and Nefesh Abamis. Connection means not just the Nefesh Elokis is there and it burns you up. Nefesh Elokis brings itself to Nefesh Abamis in a manner that the Nefesh Abamis can really absorb it, relate to it, and see what kind of light and what kind of warmth it provides. Then it can really begin to appreciate it and be misbaded. This is what the Rebbe is explaining now. So, even though there is fire in Nefesh Elokis, but it's not going to be birur. This inyan, that the Nefesh Elokis brings forth fire to Nefesh Abamis, and yet there is no birur, as long as there is no oil, it could be in one of two ways. The result of that fire can be in one of two ways. Either the fire would extinguish completely. There's no oil, it doesn't connect. Hainu, which would mean that the fire of the Nefesh Elokis would simply rise away, go off the psila, of the wick. It would not hold on. The psila could not hold on to this fire. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't feel it. You say it's wonderful. I don't see why it's wonderful. And it lets go. Kasha be'emez heim rechoikim umuvdolim ze mize legamri. Being that in truth they are distant and separate one from the other in two different worlds. V'heim hafochim mamos, and they're literally opposites. The Ruach HaOdam hi ho'elo kanal, because the Ruach HaOdam, this is what rises upwards, and the Ruach HaBeimo is what descends downwards. This is what we said yesterday, the day before, about the marshal of the meal with the host. Rabbi Shabbat says, I don't know what you want from me. The meal is a good meal. Let's eat it. And then the Nefesh Elokis, the human Nefesh, says, you can't do that. It's too degrading. I don't know what you're talking about. It's good for the belly. What's degrading about it? There is no communication means. You understand? They're not talking the same language. Because the Nefesh Abamis, its fire is for the good meal. Nefesh Elokis, its fire is for the human quality, and they don't communicate. So the Nefesh Elokis can scream, and Nefesh Abamis is not affected by it, doesn't feel the warmth, doesn't feel the significance of this. and therefore nothing happens. Kovel Lagamli, it extinguishes completely. V'lohoya hanefesh ho'alikis mischaber klal in hanefesh habamis levarer hoi. So then the nefesh ho'alikis would not at all have any connection with the nefesh habamis levarer hoi to have the effect of birur, of refining it and giving it a sense of the value of good things, of ruchnisike things. We have spoken about this many times in different ways. Years back, maybe most of you were there. There's the element, the human element. First, it's starting on a simple human element. Nefesh Olikis is a very high, on a simple human element. What's called self-respect. The example that we gave, many examples. One example is you stand on a subway platform and the train arrives and opens the doors and the people on the train have to disembark and you have to go inside. Okay? And you eye a seat. Oh, there's a seat over there. I want to get that seat. The fact that there is a throng of people in front of you doesn't deter you at all. So you go with your horns and go right through them and run to that seat. And you don't realize how degrading this is. How degrading this is. Even in the Beis Hamikdash, the Gemara says, the Lechem Aponim. Lechem Aponim was divided amongst all the Kohanim. And at some time, they didn't divide it like there was the Kohen Gadol giving out little pieces. They went and they broke it up and everyone grabbed a little piece. This little piece that they would grab, it was really some experience. Lechem Aponim says that when every little crumb would satisfy a person's hunger completely. It was mamish a miraculous bread. Beside the miracle, it's a tremendous mitzvah. To eat from Lechem Aponim is a tremendous mitzvah. So the Gemara says, Hatznuim hoyemeishim asideim. That the finer amongst the Kohanim would not even go there. Moishim, they would withdraw. They would not go there. Even though it's a tremendous mitzvah. Hoyemeishim asideim.
Only wait for the other Kohanim?
Sorry?
Only wait for the other Kohanim. I'm to get a piece first and then they would...
If there was anything left, they would have it. But they would not go and be in the front lines and grab it. And the Gemara calls them Hatznuim, which means they're the finer people. Even there it made sense. Certainly in grabbing a seat on the train for 3 stops, so it really is totally degrading for a human being. Except the Nefesh Habamis, literally, it does not relate to this whole thing. Why do I care what this guy thinks of me? I don't care. I never saw him. I'll never expect to see him. I don't care what he thinks of me. Nefesh Habamis says nothing to do with what he thinks. What you think of yourself is important. Who are you? I don't see the big thing. Why? Because I'd rather sit than have self-respect. Sounds familiar? This is Nefesh Olakis and Nefesh Habamis. I'd like any one of you to imagine the Rebbe standing in front of those subway doors and running for the seat.
It's not coming.
What'd you say?
The image is not coming.
The image is not coming. The Rebbe used to ride the subways in Paris. You didn't know that, right? Yeah, the Rebbe used to ride subways in Paris. But I can't imagine the Rebbe her chasing his tail to get a seat. I can't imagine that.
They say that the Rebbe stood between the cars. Is that true? Yeah.
No, it's dangerous or something. He would stand, he would not sit down, the cloud, for different reasons. Okay. So this is one option, that an Nefesh Elokis would not be able to be appreciated and connect to the Nefesh Abamis altogether, and then it would just brush off. Or that the Nefesh Abamis would be consumed and burnt up quickly. That's the other option. What's the pshat? HAYOIM, which would mean that the Nefesh Elokis, the fire of the Nefesh Elokis, would burn up completely. Kol mehus umetzius HaNefesh Abamis. It would totally burn up the whole presence of the Nefesh Abamis. V'loi b'derech birur, not in a birur manner. Birur means you're refining it. It's there and it's functioning, but it's functioning in a refined manner. Kiyim, rather, nevad mitziyusoi legamri, that its mitzius, its presence, would be lost. Nevad means lost totally. As I mentioned the other day, that in terms of the way a person's mind works, it's much easier for him to relate to one extreme or the other, either to be completely ruchnis or completely gashmis. To combine the two, which requires application of seichel and avoida, do the right thing and control yourself, that is something which does not lend itself that easily for a person to follow this path. This is why the Rambam said that derech ha-mitzvah, the middle way, this is the derech Hashem, this is the derech Havayim. This is derech Havayim, because that requires avodah. As we have it in the moshel from the fire. If the fire is allowed to burn, but in a controlled way, then the fire gives off light. There's nothing more finer than light. And the same is true. In this Nefesh Elokis and Nefesh Abamis combination. That if the Nefesh Abamis gets consumed, then the person, it doesn't exist in the Gashmistic world. And it does not bring light into the world. Just, it's destructive. It comes to mind, many years ago, there was a man who got married, and whenever his wife she did not have the ability of staying put, of doing things in a measured manner, but go one extreme or another. Came to Erev Pesach, and you have to clean for Pesach, clean for Chometz. You have to make sure there is not a crumb, everything has to be cleaned out, everything has to be searched out, and so forth. And that requires tenaciously and and it requires patience and requires attention. So he came to me at one time and says, she started throwing matches on the floor. It's one way to clean for Pesach, right? Burn everything up. When a person does not have the ability, the oil, to bring the light down in a manner that's light, not fire, then this is what happens. I want to make sure that it's 100% Pesach. So what do? Burn it up. Instead of doing it piecemeal and cautiously. Just 1 second. This was a wild thing, but this is a tendency that is almost natural in human being. Everybody can find it in one way or another. I want to learn, so I'm going to stay up to 3 o'clock in the morning. I want to learn so much. But what's going to happen? You're outside of the order of the yeshiva. Or I'm going to be very holy. I'm going to stay up to 3 o'clock in the morning. Right? I told you that one time a Bocher wrote, I saw it in the note, a Bocher wrote some REBBE. Yeah, I told you this recently, right? That I want to go my own way, not be part of the yeshiva Seder. And describing to the Rebbe what he's going to do to the Rebbe. He's going to fool the Rebbe. He was so convinced that he's going to do this, and I'm sure that this will bring me up in the path of HAYOIM base scale. It'll bring me to Avodas Hashem. So the Rebbe crossed out HAYOIM base scale. And he said, he'll read it to the path, and the Rebbe crossed out, and the Rebbe always said, crossed out, and just add a word. Crossed out HAYOIM base scale. Hayered leisel tachtis. It will bring you to the path that will bring you to leisel tachtis. Yes.
We see like by Hanukkah, for example, when the wick is lit with the oil, nevertheless the wick runs out eventually, but the body never runs out. So, is that? What does that mean?
It's true that the wick runs down because the oil gets consumed, and then at that moment the wick gets run down. But the point of the wick is not that it should run down. The point of the wick is that it should hold the fire and give off light. Yeah, and it brings the oil to the fire, and thereby it gives off light. The light that you see come and go, like say sometimes a candle gives off beautiful light. That's not due to the wick, it's due to the oil. The purer the oil, the nicer the fire.
Really, the type of wick doesn't affect the flame? The nice...
I explained to you, like we have now the fiberglass wick. That doesn't burn at all. But the type of wick does make a difference in one way. If it's a good conductor of oil. You know what I'm saying? That the oil will actually rise up, or it would not rise up smoothly. But if it rises up, then the fire is from the oil completely. And the wick is holding down that the oil shouldn't be consumed suddenly. It's consumed as it is being fed through the wick.
The oil would be consumed immediately without the...
No, then it wouldn't burn at all.
Right.
It depends what kind of fuel it is. Oil would not burn at all. But other fuels like...
So, for example, if you have the fiberglass and oil, so So what's burning there?
The oil.
But I thought the oil doesn't burn.
No, the oil burns only if it is controlled, only if it is just a little tip. But if you put a match into oil, it will extinguish. But if you put a match into, say, alcohol, it'll burn. All right.
Why is that?
What?
If you put in the oil, it will extinguish. You put into alcohol, it will burn.
Yeah.
Why?
Because alcohol is already fire. Alcohol is already fire. Alcohol is, what is it? It's if you shake it up without a match, it'll catch fire. Give it a good shake. And as it is written elsewhere, Be'inyan, regarding the general episode, that if Yitzchok were to give the blessing to Esau, Yitzchok intended to give Esau the blessing, and instead Yankov got the blessing. So it's discussion. See this? What was going on over there? Yitzchok wants to give blessing to Esau. Esau's a Rosh. What was the point of giving him a blessing for success? So it says that Yitzchok, because of his superior madrega, he was able to see in Esau tremendous madregas, and he thought, he intended that by this bracha he would be mevarer Esau, and Esau would rise up. Esau would be even higher than Yankov. But that is not the way to be mevarer Esau. This is where Rivka mixed in and she stopped it. Then Esau would just cease to be, would just burn up in Kedusha, and he would not be able to produce any light, any goodness.
What if he would get the bracha?
If he would get the bracha. V'habirur le'at le'at. The birur, a slow, step-by-step birur. Step, yeah, le'at le'at, I mean, piecemeal, right? Yeah, slow. Piecemeal is le'at. Yeah, piecemeal, one bit at a time.
Okay, so what's the intention of lot? Lot is slow?
Le'at means stepwise.
Step
One step at a time.
Okay, one step at a time.
Levararoi, lezachachoi, to be mevarer and to purify him, sheyuchal be'elokus. The word sheyuchal over here, it comes in kiloyein, that he should actually be nichlal in elokus. Nichlal, be incorporated in elokus. Zehu, al dei Yankov dafka. This can only be accomplished to Yankov, not directly to Esau. We will still discuss this as we go through it a little bit. And K'moi came behabiru the nefesh habamis. The similar thing is in the biru of nefesh habamis, that the biru of nefesh habamis is not directly for the nefesh habamis, but hu alidei ha-nefesh olekis. It is through the effect of the nefesh olekis. Shemischaber imoi, when he connects with him, umevarer roi la'at le'at, and he transforms him step by step, bit by bit. What is this bit by bit birur? and this is very important. שהכויכויס דה נפש הבאמיס נכלולי בנפש האלוקיס. Biru la'at means, in the nefesh, there are two general levels. There's the nefesh itself, that's like the koiches makifim, rotzen, and oinig of the nefesh. And then there is the koiches nefesh abamis. The koiches is seichel and midis. Seichel and midis and machshava dibur ma'aser have to be attended to step by step. How do you mevarer? How do you improve in your actions? If you want to increase your learning by 3 hours a day, and you're going to start it right away at 3 hours a day, you're going to increase it 1/2 hour at a time. Half hour at a time, and for a week's time, for 2 weeks, you're going to do this, then it becomes already a part of you, and your mind is able to attend to it, and you give it another half hour. If you're going to do it suddenly, it's not going to work. It's going to break. So this is the birur of the koichos. Now, it's important to understand that when you mevarer the koichos, like machshava dibur u'ma'aser, thought, speech, and deed, you teach yourself to think right, teach yourself to speak right, and teach yourself to act right. Now, thought, speech, and deed, these are the chitzonis yekoiches. This is all an external. What about your midas, your feelings, and your mind? But in order to get to your midas, in order to be mevarer midas first, you have to be mevarer machshava dibur u'ma'aser. In a piecemeal manner, slow, step by step. Then you can start working on your midas. And then after that, you can first start working on your seichel. This is called birur. You're actually transforming and elevating nefesh habamis. Give you an example, a simple example. You have a tendency for anger, let's say. How do you mevarer anger? You start from machshava dibur u'ma'aser. The first thing is, you get angry, but you don't act on it. Normally you would scream, bang on the table. So you hold yourself back not to bang on the table. You're still angry, but you don't let it out. After a while that you trained yourself, that you were able to, so to speak, forego, get over the anger at that level, then you can start working on the causes of the anger and not to be affected in the first place. But you can't work the other way. Start directly from controlling, from changing your attitude, your nature. This is called birur. This is why the Alter Rebbe in Tanya, we're learning now this, so to speak, the real element, all the Avedas in Tanya, the different ahavas and all the different thoughts that a person has and so forth. He goes through very simple thoughts. Because that's called avodah. One goes through these minimal steps. It seems minimal, superficial, external. But this has a real effect. This has a real effect on the nefesh habamis. Because the tendency of nefesh habamis is to jump. Don't let him jump. Once, twice, 3 times, he knows that's it. He can jump. Now he has to go and attend to what his anger is all about. This is what we mentioned the other day, that if a person has, let's say, taivas hu'achila, even if he delays, the Alter Rebbe says, even if he delays his meal for 15 minutes, it's a real avodah. 15 minutes. What's the avodah? Because the nefesh habahamis, if he wants something, he can't imagine not to get it. I want it. How can I possibly not satisfy my want? By delaying it 15 minutes, you teach him it's not imperative that you give in to your want. There is something more significant than giving in to your want. Say Kapitel Tilim, say Mishnah Mishnayos, or whatever. That is a real birur. That's a refining of nefesh habahamis. You're not going to fast. You're not depriving him of his food. You're going to give it to him 15 minutes later. That's real birur. Based on what we discussed before, that people have a tendency for extremes more easily than to the middle way. Here also we have a very interesting phenomenon. In a certain way, it's easier for a person to decide, I'm not going to eat, than to say, I'm going to eat 15 minutes later. It's a phenomenal thing. I'm not going to eat, so then he puts all his yeshes, all his koiches in not eating. Here you have you're not becoming a big tzaddik through this. Just delay for 15 minutes. That becomes more difficult than fasting the whole day. And that's the real avodah. Because the idea is to have the nefesh habahamis function and act, but act like a human being. And do the right thing. Okay, let's go inside when we have to go away. This is what the Rabbi says, the koiches of nefesh habahamis nichloim in nefesh elokis. The koiches of nefesh, not the whole nefesh habahamis per se. The koiches, it's functioning koiches, the seichel and midas. Machshava dibur u'maisa. Avol kiloyin the nefesh habahamis b'vasachas, but to consume the nefesh habahamis suddenly, all at once, ein ze b'derech birur. That is not the way of birur. That's a destructive way. Okay? Continue the mitzvah next time.
What do you mean to consume it,
like I said before, like I said just now, I give you an example.
Fasting?
Yeah, fasting. I'm not giving in fasting. That's not a birur. You're not really getting the benefit at all from the nefesh habahamis.
Why is there a way to refine it slowly from the outside in? Meaning, start from the mashal and the maisa and then get to the midas and the seichel. I would have thought it made more sense if you start to work from within, then you will change the expressions of the Shabbat.
There are many ways to explain this. But one thing that makes it very obvious. Think about it. Which is easier? To go inside and say, oh, this is wrong, this is what I want to be, or just say, no, I'm not going to do it.
Just to say no.
No. Not true. Not true. To say no, at Machshava Dibur Maisa, is more challenging. Because you're not really you're not really feeling that you're doing anything. Really, I understand what it is, I understand what I'm doing, and I'm going to transforming myself. Nothing. I'm just doing the right thing. This is a very superficial answer. I mean, there's much more to it. But the point which I'm making is that even at that level, you could see that this is more difficult. The reason it's more difficult is because it affects the Nefesh Abamis more deeply. You don't give him a sense that he is really accomplishing something. You're really getting him to join and be controlled.